Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed podcast for episode 111. We are going to be talking about reviews and the review process in this particular video. We've recently seen a content piece from, I guess, another creator who was talking about potential conflicts of interest in reviews and how potentially people who say they're independent are not necessarily independent because they're, getting review samples in or getting early access or including affiliate links in their description. And obviously we do some of those things, so we have some thoughts about it. Surprise, surprise. Not meant as a sort of takedown of this particular video. Don't want people flooding the comments there, taking this person down. But we do have some differences of opinions that we'll be getting to in this podcast. And also just a discussion about how we think about reviews, why we do things the way we do, and how we manage potential conflicts of interest. So if you're interested in all that sort of thing, let's get into this podcast. So in this week's podcast, we're taking a break from the normal chat about the latest PC hardware type of stuff. We're actually going to be talking about reviews because that is largely what we do at Hardware Unboxed. And this is all going to stem from a video that I guess, Steve, you found. Maybe it was linked to us in our Discord. Not quite sure how you came across this video. It was actually recommended to me on my homepage at one point. So maybe it's just doing the rounds at the moment, but it's a video from a guy called Peter Kuczynski, I believe. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, which talks about Marques Brownlee, so MKBHD, who covers phones. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with him. And his video is titled MKBHD or the Illusion of Independence. So it's essentially a video discussing how reviews are made and whether or not reviewers are genuinely independent if they do certain things, largely have affiliate links in the description or have early access to review units or given review units and that sort of thing. And he makes the claim in the video that potentially a reviewer like Marques, or really he was basically making the video about Marques, is maybe not independent because of taking those actions. So you've seen the video, Steve. You linked this to me and I watched it and I found it interesting. Mm-hmm. What's your sort of summary of the situation that he presents?
Yeah, well, I first found Peter's channel because he made a video about Linus. It was about Linus overhyping the Steam machine, let's say, calling it, I think it was...
I've just seen it, yes. It's Linus Tech Tips or the Art of Selling Anything.
Yeah, I think Linus was saying the Steam machine is like the best workstation PC he's used. Which is a bizarre claim to make. So I thought that's interesting. I watched the video and I thought that video was pretty good. That video from Peter, I was really sort of on his side. If there's a side to pick, I thought Linus made some bizarre claims about the Steam machine that don't really make sense to me. And it was really pointing out the fact that Linus didn't make any compelling arguments for why he was making those claims. So I thought reasonable enough. Then because I watched that video, I got recommended this next video, and the inverse has happened here where I think he's making some claims, but hasn't provided any evidence to back them up. Like it's just, I don't know why this video is necessarily about Marques. And I guess that's what we'll get into. Like, I really think the big problem I have with that video is he's targeted this guy because, he's a big prominent figure. And I suppose, attaching yourself to MKBHD, good for views, right? So maybe I'm not saying that's the angle here, but having watched the video, I came away from the video thinking, okay, this to me seems like someone who doesn't really, I don't want to say doesn't understand the industry, but they're seeing these things, flagging them as being bad. And I think they've got quite a bit of it wrong. And my main sticking point with the video was that, again, I don't know why it's about Marques. I don't know Marques. I'm not friends with him. I'm not here to defend him. I'm not really familiar with his content. I know some people will be like, why did you guys talk for an hour about this video if you don't, you don't watch Marques's content? That's not really relevant for the discussion that we're going to have here about early samples and affiliate links and all that sort of stuff.
And in any case, I actually have watched a fair bit of his channel, especially because I used to be a phone reviewer. So
sure.
back in the day.
I couldn't care less about phones and a lot of the stuff he covers, which is why I don't watch his content. It's not for me. But my point is, take away MKBHD and replace that with Gamers Nexus or Hardware Unboxed and change the name Marques to Steve. and it's the same video. So I'm like, why did he? If you're going to attack someone, if you're going to attack their credibility, you really need to do better than that. You need more than that. I watched the video and I came away from it going, okay, so what's he actually doing that's different to anyone else? Especially people who are well regarded in this industry like Gamers Nexus. What's he doing different from Gamers Nexus? And Peter failed to point out one thing. Like, Gamers Nexus have access to early samples and have been participating in that for a long time. They have affiliate links. And really, they're the only two things he really pointed to that make Marquez not independent.
So I think it's probably a good point to sort of, I guess, summarize what Peter sort of said in his video in relation to Marquez. So essentially, and it's worth watching the video. So
Definitely.
Pause this podcast. The video is only about 13 minutes long, so it's an easy watch. Essentially, Peter's points come down to a couple of things, and hopefully I'm not taking his video out of context. And there are some things I genuinely think are important points that he brings up that are relevant. So his points generally are that, Marquez presents himself as an independent reviewer, and he talks about serving his viewers with his content, and that he works for the viewers, something that we've also said on our channel. But then Peter looks into the way that Marquez's business is structured and how he goes about the review process. So part of that is he gets access to Apple products, iPhones, and other phones, whatever he's covering, ahead of the general public. So he's able to produce reviews before other people. And Peter brings up in his video that this allows you to sort of get ahead on the YouTube algorithm. You have this access. And even if a company like Apple isn't paying Marquez directly, they are essentially giving him access that allows him to be paid more than someone else might be able to be paid without the access. He then goes on to say things like, if you've got affiliate links in the description, you have this incentive to sort of maybe create reviews that are positive so that people will buy products via the affiliate links. And towards the end of the video, he sort of goes through his cheat sheet, I guess, which is to how to spot a truly independent reviewer, in his words, and how, he isn't necessarily trusting or believing creators that claim to be independent but do these sorts of things. So, for example, if they don't buy the products themselves, that is sort of a red flag in his opinion. If they have these links to affiliate, they have affiliate links in the description or whatever, that's a red flag. And he wants to see things like, reviewers funded by largely unrelated product advertising. So that might be, if you're doing a phone review and then you're sort of reviewing a VPN, you have a VPN ad or something in there, that would be sort of an unrelated company. And he also poses this question about how, if a company is pissed off by a review, do they have a significant amount of control over the reviewer? And, could they take some of these revenue generation streams away, like the access sort of things? And if that's the case, then potentially the reviewer is not as independent as is first claimed. And so, he goes through all these sort of points. And I do agree with you about how he sort of is bringing up these things and also is bringing up Marquez, but he doesn't necessarily link the two together in a particularly compelling way, as in, like, if you're saying Marquez is doing a bad job or is being influenced by affiliate links, for example, to make positive reviews, and you go through and you sort of say, well, this guy's sort of doing a dodgy job or whatever, I think you'd probably need to go through and say, well, maybe show a few examples of, like, in this video, he was overly positive because he got the early access and there was affiliate links. And then in this other review, he didn't get early access, he didn't have affiliate links, and it was maybe more negative. And if you do that over a large sample of videos, you might be able to come to a more firm conclusion. Whereas this sort of just seemed like making a point about reviews, but then also just including Marquez's name in the video.
Yeah, which I don't like. I think if you're going to stick the guy's face in the thumbnail, put his channel name in the title, you really have to do a bit more than what's scratching the surface, and not even the bare minimum, in my opinion. You would need to dig into exactly what you've just talked about to create some kind of basic evidence. But he just hand waved that away, like, I don't have to do that, which we will talk about a bit later. So again, I've got nothing against Peter. I was sort of nodding along to a lot of the Steam Machine coverage that he did, and that got me to watch this video. But I came away from this video thinking, I don't know what this had to do with MKBHD, because again, this could have been Gamers Nexus. And while I don't really understand the affiliate link stuff that much, to be honest, because we sort of understand how that works, and I just don't think that's I just don't think that's a good argument. And then early access, again, I definitely see the arguments against that, but I think the positives of those programs outweigh the negatives. And again, we'll certainly get into that as well. But then there's a whole heap of other stuff here, and in my opinion, a lot of his cheat sheet stuff actually they benefit, I think, established people like Marquez more so than the up and coming reviewers. So if you're going to establish yourself as a truly independent reviewer based on his criteria, it's like, good luck. It's not happening. You're not doing it. Nobody out of the gate can afford to buy every single product themselves, like to the degree that they could produce enough content to gain any kind of relevancy. And then they have to make money off that content. And it's like, if you're, that's where you get guys that are like CD key sellers, BetterHelp. What's that money scam one that's going around?
Yeah. Like, gambling companies just of any kind.
Yeah. So if you set this unreasonable, highly virtuous bar, you're shutting out all future potential reviewers from entering the game. And you absolutely are. That's what's happening. And it's not affecting guys like Linus and MKBHD, who already have these established massive unstoppable machines. So again, we'll get into that a bit later on. But that was some of my thoughts around that as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think this video, and a lot of the stuff, my points that I've sort of, I've made some notes here that we're going to go through throughout this podcast, are not necessarily related directly to this video, because I think, the video, it is what it is. I don't want to sit here tearing down every line that he says in the video and why I disagree with it, because I think there's actually a good underlying point to this video. I think that while I disagree with linking it to Marquez, I personally have a significant problem with how a lot of quote unquote reviews are made these days. And I use the term review lightly because, in my opinion, I would say they're not a review. I think they're basically sponsored content, which I strongly disagree with. The sort of idea that there are people out there who are just accepting money to do reviews, and this may not be on YouTube. It could be on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. But people who are legitimately just what word can I use here? Pooing out reviews that are just like positive slop content. There's no substance to them whatsoever. And sometimes people claim that, I'm legitimately reviewing this product, or these are my legitimate thoughts. And you watch it and you're sort of like, this is clearly just sponsored content garbage. And so I think there's a point to be made with that stuff. And there are definite issues with, companies providing reviews, quote unquote, review samples to people who they know are just going to slop out this positive stuff that can flood the algorithm when people are searching for the product. All these, just ridiculously fake reviews pop up that are just from that sort of system. And of course, people are going to do the same thing with affiliate links. If you're making a ton of money recommending people buy your product on TikTok or whatever through an affiliate link, because TikTok doesn't have great monetization for ads or whatever, then you're going to be incentivized to be like, buy this product, then in the next review buy that product, and then buy this product. So I think all of that is very fair criticism of the overall sort of influencer landscape that operates at the moment. But I think targeting Marquez specifically in this wouldn't have been as strong of a point as going after the people that I think make those poor quality reviews. Marquez doesn't review necessarily how I would review either. I would put more data-driven stuff in my reviews, which you have seen from, if you compare a review from us compared to a review from Marquez. But I don't think he is anywhere near the category of someone that is just sitting up there on their TikTok vertical video telling you to buy literally anything or any product, even if they don't legitimately use it or like it. So I guess there's that. I think the first thing to talk about in terms of the main topics that he brings up is the product early access, because I think this is beneficial overall, as you've sort of said. However, I think it's, of the things that he's talked about in this video, the most ripe for abuse, because it's the most clear. There's the clearest path with this between companies controlling media outlets and media outlets being, threatened into creating positive reviews so they don't have their access taken away. So obviously, we do produce some reviews that have product early access. So a lot of the GPU reviews that you would see, some of the monitor reviews that you would see, and CPUs and that sort of thing are big. We receive samples from those companies under NDA or under some sort of embargo agreement, and we are able to review, test them ahead of time. Obviously, this creates some sort of risk because companies could go, well, we didn't like your previous review, so for the next review, we're not going to give you the sample. And as we have seen sometimes on YouTube, it does depend on the product, which I'm sure, Steve, you'll talk about in a moment. But as we have seen, one of the good ways to get traction is to have your review up along with other people. You seem legitimate. You've got the product covered before people can purchase it. And if you're trying to produce the exact same review later down the line, potentially, though it does depend, you're not going to have the same number of views or traction, I guess, through the YouTube algorithm as you would by getting that early access.
Yeah, yes and no. I know. Fundamentally, I know what you're saying, but we are, we work. I don't know if "work with" is the right word. There are a lot of smaller tech reviewers that we assist and help out with advice or sampling or whatever it may be. And I often recommend to them not to release their early access reviews at the same time as Linus Tech Tips, Gamers Nexus, Hardware Unboxed, and all those guys, because you end up with, well, the reality is you end up with dozens and dozens and dozens of video reviews of the same product released at the same time, flooding YouTube, and you get the small piece of the pie, hurts all the hard work you put in. I've recommended to guys wait 24 hours or at least 12 hours, then put out your content, and they've found it performs significantly better. And sometimes even releasing their review days later works well, because you think about it, right? People, they race to see Gamers Nexus or LT2 or whoever, and then they're worn out. They've got like fatigue. Like I can only watch so many, whatever it is, GeForce RTX 5080 reviews today. But then a few days later, they're still thinking about it. I might purchase it or whatever. They go to look at reviews again, and a fresh review pops up, and they'll go watch that. So, if you're a smaller reviewer trying to, gain some traction, possibly competing with everyone else isn't the way to go initially. Build up, your audience and stuff, doing it that way. But that's just a little,
Yeah, I think it depends. I think where the early access thing can make a difference is if you're one of just a handful of people that has gotten early access.
Yeah, like the 9950 X3D2.
Yeah.
We saw that play out there, and that was hugely beneficial for us. We didn't even know that was going to be the situation. And of course, we sent our CPU to Gamers Nexus to assist them. And then we had the whole thing about us breaking NDA and, oh no, AMD's never going to sample us again. And to that, we said, we don't give a shit. We're going to help out Gamers Nexus. We're sending them a sample, and we essentially gave the middle finger to AMD. And what did AMD do about that? Nothing to our knowledge so far. They've sampled us since. So we've proven multiple times we do not care at all about being part of these early access programs. Like, yeah, we want to get the product as soon as we can to give an independent and honest review of the product to our audience. But we've had these companies threaten us. All of them have threatened us. Intel, AMD, Nvidia, they've all threatened us at some point in time to remove our access if we don't play ball. And we've told them in no uncertain terms to shove it, and they've backed down every time one way or another. So we are not beholden to these companies. There's publicly available evidence that what I'm saying is true. And, I've been doing this for more than 2 decades now, and we don't, they cannot manipulate us. They cannot strong arm us in any way. And they know it. Like, they absolutely know it. and so they don't even try. NVIDIA just sends the sample now. They don't say anything to us. They just send and forget. they just send it on their way and close their eyes.
I think there's sort of a misconception that companies have a lot of control when it comes to these sort of early access samples.
Peter gets this very wrong. He misreads this massively.
I think this might have been true back in the day when it was largely like print media or whatever, and it wasn't this sort of algorithmic control of content where people are on these like the point that you make up about flooding the algorithm with all these content and people not being able to watch a whole bunch of reviews day one is also that YouTube will stop serving you content after a certain point. If you're not showing an interest in the content, you're not going to be served more content. Whereas maybe a decade ago or whatever, you go to any of the major websites that had covered a review and that would be the main thing that you would see. And so you'd be sort of encouraged to look at that sort of first early access review or whatever. But nowadays, the way YouTube works, you actually have to have sort of like a unique angle. If you're a smaller creator that's trying to create that day one review sort of thing, and you're just creating a review that's largely the same as a Gamers Nexus Hardware Unbox LTT or one of those, it's not going to gain a ton of traction if you publish it at the same time. And so you need that unique angle. You're looking at it in maybe a slightly different perspective or offering something new to the table and then not getting flooded with the content. But also the simple way to get around the control, and as you pointed out, companies know this, is that you expose them if they abuse the system. Yeah. And these days, there's so much, it's almost like meta commentary on the industry, which is sort of like, this company does dodgy thing or this company does dodgy thing. And there's all this interest in investigations into dodgy companies. We've seen, just recently there was another update to the honey situation from Megalag, sort of this expose into a company sort of abusing the affiliate system. So whenever a company, like for example, if you've been given early access to a product and that's been established over a while, like Marquez has been given all the iPhones for the last however many years. And then 1 year, because maybe Marquez gave a negative review to the previous iPhone, Apple's like, we're not sending you the next one. I mean, if you sit on that news and you just sort of like don't do anything about it and you don't make an expose, you're just like, okay, then you're accepting being controlled. It's kind of almost on the reviewer, like, and I don't want to victim blame someone here by sort of saying, well, a company's trying to strong arm you into doing something, and then you're sort of, you have to do something about it. It's on you. But really, in this situation, Marquez has more power than Apple, because if Marquez makes a video saying, I have been sampled the iPhone for the last 10 years and they've stopped sampling me because I made a negative review, and I believe it's because of this negative review, and you show your correspondence and all that sort of thing, that's a massive video. That's probably going to do better than the review. Yeah. And this creates a whole bunch of negative press. We've seen this with our NVIDIA situation a few years ago. Companies want to avoid this. And so the way to, you don't want to make a one-way street where companies can just control you and through this access and there's no recourse. You need to make it a two-way street where the expectation is, the companies can send you review samples and you sort of accept that they can take that away. But also the companies need to know that if that access is revoked for a reason that may be because you've done a negative review, that you're going to talk about that. You're going to make that a story, because it is a story.
Which was why it was so important, and people kept complaining about, entitled reviewers, you're not owed review samples. When we went into bat for Gamers Nexus, when AMD wouldn't reply to their emails and didn't send them samples, and we said, that's not good enough. And we felt people had a really bad take on this, and they were essentially doing what Peter thinks, they're doing, and that is by controlling the media with samples. And that's why they can't pick and choose what they want to send to an established reviewer like Gamers Nexus, who they've worked with for years. If Gamers Nexus, rightfully so, has a negative thing to say about a product, they can't just revoke his access because of that. And that's what he goes on to talk. Peter talks about, this is getting into the realm of corruption, and we agree. That's why. But I want to read basically, the context here for what we're talking about from his video. So I'll just read a quote from this. So Peter said, Once they let you through that door, they are also the ones holding the key. Marquez can always walk away and buy the phone himself, but if he wants early access again, he can't create it himself. He has to be invited back. And what does the manufacturer lose if one reviewer walks away? Not much, because there are plenty more people standing outside the same door. So, again, in our opinion, they're not holding shit. They haven't. In our opinion, and again, we've lived this, we've seen it, we've proven it. The risk is 100% on the company for opening that door. Again, we've proven this with a massive corporation like Nvidia. Once they open that door, closing it is extremely difficult, especially when the door's been open for a long time. It's very difficult for them to remove that access. Nvidia tried to remove it with us and were not able to. And that was years ago now. And as I said, they just send us stuff now. They don't say too much. And, if they want to remove that access from us, it's going to be difficult. That's already been proven. So again, that's where I feel like Peter's wrong. And, where he says Marquez can always walk away, buy the phone himself if he wants early access again, he can't create that himself. But I disagree. Marquez has created a special key that gives him access. It's called his massive YouTube channel with over 20 million subscribers that generates 600 million views per year. He's extremely valuable to them, but he's also very dangerous to them. Like, Marquez can cripple any major brand, as we've just said, on a whim. Like, his influence is very dangerous to them. So they really have to play ball with him, not the other way around. And again, we've proven this. I'm not just saying things. We have evidence that we can point to on our own channel. Like, Nvidia we're talking about Nvidia here. They got absolutely steamrolled by what happened with us. There were alarm bells going off. Jensen was involved. We've heard this from higher ups in the company. It was an absolute cluster, and they had to revert very quickly because of the public backlash. So again, I'm not saying Marquez is this amazing independent reviewer. I don't know him from a bar or so, but we're talking more general here because the claims that have been made can, as I said, can be broadly applied to us or Gamers Nexus or anyone else who does this sort of stuff. So that's my opinion on most of that.
Yeah. I think with the early access sort of thing, obviously it can harm the sort of up and coming creators if they're relying on, this sort of access from media outlets. And someone who, maybe only has 20,000 subscribers doesn't have the sort of ability to necessarily blow up these topics and sort of put it back on the companies. But I think in a perfectly working ecosystem, which doesn't necessarily always happen, you need to rely on one another in this sort of ecosystem to, if there is someone who is being abused by a company in this way, the larger channels that have more influence, it can be helpful if they, as we have done many times, sort of highlight these problems and sort of go, well, I'm reviewing these products from insert company, but that company also has recently screwed over this small reviewer by taking away their access from this thing. And again, the way that the media landscape works these days is that the review is content, but also any drama related to the review is content. This isn't like a newspaper where, that, let's say they take away the access of a newspaper. That's not a front page story. Like, that's going to be maybe buried somewhere or not covered at all. On YouTube, there's a hunger for that sort of type of content, and people make content about the content. Someone gets screwed over, so then another creator jumps on board and is like, I'm going to give my take on this, and that becomes more and more content. It feeds this ecosystem. And I think a lot of these companies are well aware of how this works. If Marquez had access revoked, it wouldn't just be him covering that content. Like, that would be covered by everyone. Yeah, it'd be a big deal and be highly damaging to the companies.
Yeah, and the part where Peter says, what does the manufacturer lose if one reviewer walks away? Not much, because there are plenty more people standing outside the same door. Again, I think that's rubbish, completely wrong, misread of the situation, and it's treating all reviewers as equal. Like, we're not equal with Marquez. He's 20x, well, he's more than 20 times more influential than we are, for at least the stuff he covers, right? So the manufacturer loses something they can't easily replace. They lose a reviewer with extreme global reach. Again, 20 million subscribers, 600 million views a year. There's not someone else standing outside the door with anywhere near that kind of reach, because if there was, they'd already be getting sampled. And there's not I guess you could say there is a finite amount of samples, but not to that degree. So if there's another 20 million subscriber tech channel that reviews stuff, they're going to already be in the review program. It's not like there's 6 samples and they pick the 6 most influential, the 6 guys that'll play along or whatever. So yeah, the other guys stand at the door. They're standing at the door because they haven't, proven that the companies will get their return on investment or whatever it might be. And look, if NVIDIA had their time again, they wouldn't include us in the review program. But you don't know, right? And whether someone's going to be honest or not going into it.
Well, I think it even gets to a point where, let's say NVIDIA had never put us into the review sample program and we became a 1 million sub channel, doesn't it eventually become a point where that's suspicious or even a negative story just in and of itself? Because why would NVIDIA be sampling a Gamer's Nexus or even a smaller channel, maybe like a Daniel Owen or someone like that, but not Hardware Unboxed? That would be a bit weird, wouldn't you think? Especially if we were being sampled by another company.
I mean, I guess if we just said we didn't want to be sampled, that would be one answer to that. But
sure, but if we had said something along the lines of, we would love to work with NVIDIA, but they're just not interested. But that's a bit of a story. I think the other thing I want to talk about, which is related to this as well about the early access, is just this idea about getting the products at all. And so there's this, one of the key points that was made in this video relates to, reviewers should be buying the products themselves. And you're not truly independent if you're not purchasing the products, not getting them sent. And access is one thing, but it's also just providing the product. You can do that without, we get tons of products after they're released or whatever from companies that are not necessarily, giving us reviews because of early access. It's just because we have access to the product. And my opinion with this sort of thing about, are you a more independent reviewer if you purchase the product or whether you've had it given to you or loaned to you by the company? In my opinion, this should be completely irrelevant. And I say this, if you're doing a good job as a reviewer, the source of your review sample should be of no consequence.
Well,
you should have...
I was just jumping quickly, so to interrupt you, but a lot of the time we can't actually get review samples for whatever reason, and we do source them ourselves, whether it's from other industry contacts, distributors, whatever. And a lot of the time we don't even disclose that. We just, we adhere to the NDA, the embargo time and date, because we know that's what other reviewers are adhering to. Gamers Nexus have also done this. So a lot of the time you don't even know if we did or didn't, get included in early access, because you don't need to be included in early access a lot of the time to get early access. So, there's been plenty of examples where we've had to source stuff on our own ahead of time because we do have a lot of, contacts within the industry that do get these things ahead of time. And we've done it that way. So just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, and I think, and to be clear, the reason why we don't feel it necessary to go through and explain in every single review how we've gotten the product, whether it's through side channels or whatever, or whether we've purchased or whatever, is because I strongly, and this is one of the strongest things I believe about the review process, is that the source of the product should be irrelevant. If having the sample given to you by a company versus buying it has any influence over your review, you suck as a reviewer. You're bad at your job. You're terrible at your job. You should have a review process. So you go through the same thing for every product. You're using it in the same way, testing it the same way for every product, regardless of how you've gotten it. It should make absolutely no difference. I know people will say, oh, but there'll be some sort of subconscious bias that you'll want to get the products in for free as opposed to buying it. No, if you're doing your job properly, that is not influencing you whatsoever. And I think people as well sort of don't realize that as a job, it's not necessarily like this exciting thing when the next product is given to us for free or loaned to us as opposed to buying it. I get sent 30 to 40 monitors a year, something like that, maybe 50. I'm not excited about the next one coming in. I'm excited to test products that I think are interesting, but I'm not like, whoa, I've been given a product for free. That's so exciting. I've tested over 250 monitors, and that's just one part of the thing that I do, right? it's that part of it is not exciting for me. It was exciting back in the day when I was testing my first product and I got sent the first product from a company. I was like, whoa, I'm sort of I'm not testing something I've bought now. I'm sort of getting somewhere with these companies. That's exciting. But once you're an established reviewer, you're doing this as a job, that part of the job is of no consequence. Not exciting, not interesting. If anything, it can be annoying because companies will try and send you as many products as they possibly can when you're our sort of size. And so you're actually denying a lot of products. You're sort of like, don't send me that. I don't have space for it. I don't have capacity to test it. And so the relationship, and this is, I think, in a way, hard for some regular viewers to understand, because for them, if you've received a product for the first time for free from a company, you'd probably find that very exciting. But because it's sort of like our job, it's sort of a day-to-day part of our job. It's just like any day-to-day part of your job. It may not be that exciting. But in my opinion, getting a product, whether it's from the company or you've purchased it, should make no difference. But also, buying the product is not an guarantee that product is that review is going to be good. Like you could still have someone purchasing products to do reviews, making poor quality reviews, or even reviews that are biased. Because if you're for example, you're a newer creator and you want to establish yourself and get to the position that Marquez is in. Well, one potential way that you could go about it, and I'm not saying that you should, in fact, I think you definitely shouldn't go about it this way, but one thing that you could do, buy some products, create some highly biased, favorable reviews to the companies that you're reviewing the products of. Then you send those product links to the company, like, look at the reviews I've done, in the hope of building up your business model so you can gain access and all that sort of thing. But because at the time that you reviewed those products, you've paid for them, you can claim on those reviews that you paid for the product and therefore made an independent review. But there's no guarantee that because you got that product independently, that you had any incentive to do a good job of that review. You could also just straight up lie. We've seen a lot of people on YouTube claim to be testing and reviewing products, but actually don't have the products at all. There's a lot of those side-by-side gameplay videos that you see, which are just completely fake. The products are not on hand at all. Lots of channels do that. And you don't have to say, I bought this product. You could just say, we don't receive products from companies. The truth is, you don't receive any products from anyone because you're just making it all up. But,
they're extreme examples, but yeah, I know your point.
But then there's just other things you can do as well. Just because you're buying a product doesn't mean that you're doing a good in-depth job. It is much easier, in my opinion, to create a surface level review where you just go through, you sort of list some positives, you spend 5 minutes talking about it. Diving into negatives is always the most difficult part of the review because you have to assess that what you're talking about is a legitimate flaw or a legitimate problem, that you're not just using it wrong. You have to sort of really dive into what is going on with that specific aspect, make sure that all your comparative data is locked down, because if you're testing a whole bunch of similar products, one's an outlier, you need to double, triple check that. It is so much easier to create these positive surface level reviews. And if you can just pump them out, you have an incentive there because you can get more views, you can serve more YouTube ads. And part of what this video was originally suggesting, the video from Peter, was that, by getting this early access to products, you will be part of this system that is sort of giving you more views because you're part of that early access system. Well, if you buy a whole bunch of products and you just start pumping out reviews, that's the same sort of thing. You're just generating more YouTube ads for yourself, but not doing a good quality job. Ultimately, the thing that I think makes the most difference is how good you are at your job. If you're a good reviewer, doesn't matter where you've sourced it from, you won't create biased content regardless because you're just doing your job properly. And ultimately, I think it's up to the viewers to not assess, and this is maybe something that you want to touch on. Peter talks about assessing the company structure. I think you should just assess the end product. How good is the review?
I say this all the time, your work speaks for itself, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not more complicated than that. You put your review out there, people can review the review. Was what you said accurate? Was it honest? And that's why, like Peter, I did call a lot of the Steam Machine reviews into question, because you and I know what a Steam Machine is without having one, right? It's like we know what an RX 9050 is without having one. It's no longer a mystery. the hardware is not unknown to us. We know exactly what it is, exactly what it offers, and exactly how it compares to what you have. So when people are trying to put lipstick on a pig, it's very obvious. And that's why those reviews were a bit on the nose for me anyway. But at the end of the day, your work speaks for itself. Like when AMD does something really dodgy in terms of marketing, do we call it out? When NVIDIA does something dodgy, when Intel does something dodgy, have we called it out? When they release a bad product, do we call it out? When they release a good product, do we, make note of that? We have a pretty good track record of doing all of that. And people will point to, oh, but when the 12-volt high power connector was melting, you didn't make a video. Or when AM5 CPUs were melting, you didn't make a video. Like, guys, pinning down that stuff is extremely difficult. Like, you can't just make a video without anything to add to the conversation. But when there is something we can actually add to the conversation, like AMD doing 4K CPU benchmarks to claim that their garbage tier APUs are the same performance as Intel's flagship CPUs, we can make a video about that because, we can disprove that instantly. That's, they're trying to mislead people, anti-consumer type behavior. So that's easily addressable. But yeah, your work speaks for yourself. And that, I know there was one part of the video that really irked me, and it was towards the end. And I'll just read the passage here, and I'm interested to see what you thought about this, because for me, this, in my opinion, discredited Peter and his video. And for me, I just felt like, you need to do better here if you're going to put Marquez in the thumbnail and the title and sort of attack his credibility in the way in which you did. So he goes on to say, now, to be fair to Marquez, he has criticized products before. He has given bad reviews, and by bad reviews, he means negative reviews. He's told people not to buy things. That's true, and I'm not even going to get into the details on which companies those were, how valuable those relationships are, or how much he had to actually lose in those particular cases. Let's give him the strongest version of the argument. He criticized something before, okay? But what am I supposed to do with that? Do some negative reviews mean that I now have to treat everything he says afterwards as automatically honest too? Does criticizing one product somehow make every future opinion honest? Like, what's going on there? So you've acknowledged that he has given negative reviews, like he does do his job as a reviewer, like he's a critical reviewer, but you're not going to get into the details of what reviews were critical and how valuable those relationships were. I don't understand that. Like, what's the point of the video then if you're not going to do what I would think is the absolute basic of this video? Like, that's the minimal amount of research you should have done going into this. And then he says he's going to give him the best argument possible, which he didn't do. That was very dishonest and misleading. Like, I don't know. What's your read on that? Like, he said he does some negative reviews, so now I have to treat everything as automatically honest too. Yeah, that's how that works. What you do is you review his body of work, and if it's proven to look honest, then Marquez is an honest reviewer. If you're going to just dismiss all of that and go, yeah, nah, I don't care, I reckon he's dishonest, what are you doing? Am I missing something here?
Yeah, I think there's this idea that my interpretation, I guess, is that he's thinking that you can't just, maybe create a couple of like decoy negative reviews to sort of make it look like, because let's say, like, for example, if you had a grift where you were making a whole bunch of positive SponCon type stuff, and that was your business model, and you were worried that people were sort of like catching on to it, what you would do is you would create a few decoy negative reviews about certain things to sort of obscure the fact that, largely what you just do is SponCon stuff.
Yeah.
But I think, again,
but that would be easily, but again, it would be on, for calling that person out, it would be on you to point that out very clearly. Because he's saying, he's basically saying like he did a negative review before, so whatever. But did he do one negative review, and when he did the negative review, was it called for? And has he done an overly positive review when it wasn't called for? I don't know the answer to this because it wasn't explained to me in this video where I was learning about how Marquez isn't independent and isn't possibly as honest as we think he is. But I didn't learn any of that because we just glossed over that section at the end. It was so bizarre to me. Like if I'm going to call out Marquez, put him in the thumbnail and say, this guy's not independent, he's not as honest as you think he is, I'm going to nail down exactly why that is in the content. Otherwise, I'm just using him for views. I'm like no better than the thing I'm trying to attack.
Yeah, I think there's a certain, I'm not necessarily saying that Peter does this, but there is certainly a group of, I guess, people out there. You see this sometimes on Reddit and forums and that sort of thing that believe that any positive review is just a fake review. It doesn't matter what the actual situation is. If the review isn't negative, it was paid for. And I think that this is largely where this opinion comes from, that like you could just dismiss the negative reviews, like if they make a couple of negative reviews, because any of the positive reviews, those are the suspicious ones. The negative reviews, don't need to talk about those because if it's negative, it's obviously not paid for. But the positive ones, need to scrutinize those. When realistically, again, it's about, as you've pointed out, it's about the body of work. If you've got a creator that is suspiciously creating a ton of positive content, and then there's a couple of these sort of, as I put it, decoy negative reviews, like maybe all the Apple stuff is positive. Then there's like the Samsung phone review that's done like once a year. It's always negative. That's the sort of like decoy one. Then you look at the whole body of work and you go, that's a bit dodgy, especially if, and as a reviewer, this is ultimately what it comes down to, is that you're reviewing for an audience of people that are buying products. If you're recommending something to someone and that product is actually bad, but you're saying it's good because you've been paid, eventually people will buy that product, use it, find out it sucks and that you've misled them, and then they'll start complaining about it on Reddit or social media or whatever, saying, hey, that guy who recommends all these products recommended me this product and it was absolute garbage. And then it starts building up because this happens to more and more people over time. They start recommending garbage and you lose your reputation, you lose any of your credibility. I'm not saying you have to, create negative reviews just to justify people not doing that to you. But overall, you'd want to make sure that you're recommending products genuinely so that people have a genuine good experience. And this all comes out over time eventually. You can't just hide away your sponsored content and sort of saying, let's just manipulate things in the background, because ultimately, as a reviewer, as I said, people buy the products. These are not things that you're just making content and it's all just going into the ether and it's not impacting anyone. I'm always reviewing on the understanding that someone's going into the review, they're interested in buying it. And if I tell them that a product is good and they get it and it's bad, as a reviewer, that disappoints me, especially because it's usually because maybe I've missed something. Like I've missed something in the review, they've gotten it and they're like, there's this flaw that you weren't aware of and I'm really disappointed in this product. I'm like, I almost feel sorry because I'm like, that's on me. I missed that. I recommended you that poor quality product. I didn't do my job properly. And so I don't know. I just, that whole situation of like not investigating the negative reviews or just dismissing the negative reviews because you only wanted to focus on what appears to be these positive reviews. People can have legitimate positive opinions about a product, that they think that the product's really good. There's few or maybe even no flaws to it. That is a legitimate opinion. It's not necessarily sponsored. It's just that you had that opinion. I guess the final thing that we should also touch on as well is this affiliate link stuff. So one of the points that Peter makes, in addition to needing to buy the reviewers needing to buy the products themselves, not being given to them via the manufacturers or via early access, is that reviewers shouldn't have affiliate links because it creates an incentive to create a positive review so that people buy the product through the affiliate link. Peter wants a system where if someone buys a product based on the review, the reviewer gets nothing. There's no incentive there whatsoever, no ads relating to that product. The ads are unrelated, as I sort of said. The affiliate links, referral codes, all of that, not part of the system. I guess I kind of think of this as, if you create a bad review, and by bad I mean it's a low quality, not very good review, you could potentially be incentivized to do this because you just look at the product, you don't compare it to anything else, you just look at it, you make an assessment, is this good or bad? If you have an affiliate link, obviously if you say product A is bad, no one clicks the affiliate link. If you say product A is good, people click the affiliate link. Clear incentive there to get people to say this product A is good, right? However, I think that if you're not actually doing any sort of comparative stuff in your review, you've made a pretty bad review. It's a pretty useless review, not good. Because, and as I said earlier, the way I always approach going into review is a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people read reviews because they're interested in purchasing a product in that category. So as a monitor reviewer, if I'm reviewing a 32-inch 4K OLED, my understanding is you're probably watching that review because you're interested in that specific type of product. Probably want to buy one, not necessarily the product that you're currently testing, but you're interested in that category. So it's on you as a reviewer to look at the product you're currently looking at, but then also compare it to the other options that are available. And so at the end of the review, you can make some judgment calls sort of saying, is product A the best option, or is it B, C, D, all the other options that are available? And when you do that, there's no longer that incentive to make the review of product A just an affiliate link clicking tool, because it doesn't matter if people click the link for product A or B or C or D if you're making a comparative review. It doesn't really matter. But if you're obviously only just doing this good or bad review, then yes, if you say it's good and then people click on the link, there's that incentive there. But again, I just think those reviews that people do it that way, it's not my way of reviewing. I don't think it's a very good or useful review. And so if you do it the way I believe reviews should be done, where you've got comparative data, you're giving people genuine insights and telling people whether a product is the best option in the market or not, a lot of this risk from affiliate links is completely minimized.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly how affiliate links work anyway. We've done negative reviews and crapped on products for absurd prices, and people have demanded that we have the links in the description when we haven't included them because they want to go see the price. I don't know why they can't just go search it for themselves, but you know what I'm talking about, right? We've seen backlash on that.
Yeah,
people get really, like, I'm not making this up, guys. People get really angry when an easily clickable link in the video description is not there. I don't know why, because you can just go use like a Google search to find the price. Don't know. But people want to go click on the affiliate link to see how bad the price is. But the way in which affiliate links work is that link's now valid if they don't click on someone else's affiliate link for, I think, like 24 hours on like places like Amazon.
Yeah, it depends on the retailer, but it can be up to 30 days for some of them.
Because you made a video about this where people were clicking on our links and then buying tubs of lube and like mattresses. Yeah. Didn't someone buy a barrel of lube or something?
Yeah. People would buy all sorts of things, adult equipment, if you want to put it that way. That was in there. But yeah, like mattresses, all sorts of things. It's not necessarily you get a commission directly on the product you've recommended, but if you're driving traffic to the retailer in general, then depending on how the affiliate program works, you will get some revenue from other products that people buy.
So we've actually seen our affiliate links perform well when we've annihilated a product, because just out of interest, people have wanted to go and see how badly priced or whatever it is that, that product, and they'll click on that, but then they'll go somewhere else and maybe buy something else or not buy anything. That's just how the affiliate links work. But the affiliate links, honestly, forget I said honestly, in my opinion, one of the best ways to monetize the kind of content that we or Gamers Nexus do, which is, why Gamers Nexus also have affiliate links, and pretty much everybody in the industry does, because it's a passive way of making money from, a potentially, a purchase. And you could say, like, again, you could make them nefarious and say that, they've pushed the affiliate sale or whatever. And, you could always make those arguments. But again, you go to the body of work, and we weren't telling you to buy a 9070 XT for $900 US. Recently we covered the new G-Skill Expo ULL memory, and we said under no circumstances do we recommend buying this memory. And in fact, we went a step further and we said, do not buy DDR5 memory at all right now if you can help it. And if you do need to buy DDR5 memory, again, don't buy this DDR5 memory. Don't buy premium DDR5 memory. Buy the absolute cheapest DDR5 memory you can find, because that would be the way to go about that. So we're not pushing people towards the premium big margin stuff. I could not have been more clear in my messaging there. And we do that all the time. We tell people, do not buy this product under any circumstance. Do not pay $900 US for a 9070 XT. Yeah, it was a 7900 XT.
Yeah, although 9070 XTs are probably going to creep back up to that price. But I think this is just, it all goes back to, are you doing your job as a reviewer or not?
Yeah.
If you are doing as a reviewer, you're being incentivized by affiliate links. Sorry, you're doing a bad job. You're actually probably not doing a review. You're just creating spawn con. And I guess part of and again, an alternate version of this video that didn't, and I'm talking about Peter's video, that didn't target markets and sort of more broadly talked about the problem with influencer marketing, about how for people doing SponCon, affiliate links are a genuine way to monetize SponCon. And so that's bad. But if you're someone that's doing a legitimate review, I think it goes back to, you can't just pump people towards certain affiliate links and expect that to give you credibility and make you a source of high quality review content long term. Because again, if you're in any way being manipulated away from giving your genuine true opinion about a product, and maybe manipulating it so that you're recommending less good quality products instead of the true best quality product, this again, people buy the products and then this gets exposed because you will be recommending a worse product than you should have been. People will get upset with you. And so your credibility is eroded over time. And so this whole system, like it sounds nice at the surface level when you sort of look at and you sort of say, there is this conflict here where someone could be driving traffic to affiliate links, manipulating their review content so that a certain product is recommended over another product. Absolutely, that could happen. However, over time, if you continue to do this, it will erode your credibility. And if you're a newer creator, you will gain no traction doing this either, because your recommendations will not be of any high quality, and you will not be able to compete in this creator ecosystem where there is so much competition for reviews and stuff. And yeah, maybe you can be a personality-driven creator that can eventually start doing this sort of stuff. But if you're looking for true, genuine reviews, this model does not work. You cannot just, as I said, recommend products that are not good. And on top of that, with affiliates, like in an ideal world, right, we would have a business where we can give you the reviews for free and there's no ads on them, no affiliate links, and we buy all the products ourselves. Now, how do we make the money? Not sure. But ideally, to remove as much bias or potential sources for bias, that is how we would operate our business. If we had $1 billion in cash sitting around, that's probably what we would do. We wouldn't bother organizing advertising because that's a real pain in the ass. We wouldn't bother with affiliate links because there are actually a lot of terms and conditions that you have to abide by on Amazon. For example, on Amazon, you're not really allowed to cache pricing. So you're not allowed to tell people a price that is not the current price on Amazon. It's quite restrictive, some of those things. We would not have Patreon or things like that. We would just give our opinions. However, let's be real. We don't have a pile of $1 billion sitting around to run our business at a massive loss every year. We actually have to make money so that we can afford to live and also afford to, maybe buy the products or buy the equipment that we need to do testing. And so the options are really for people. Do you want I don't mean paid reviews as in they're paid by the companies, but do you want them behind a paywall? And so they're not free? That's one option. We've seen places like Ratings recently move to a paywall model. So that is, in my opinion, not great for people because you now have to spend money to access review content. Or do you want free reviews but with a lot of advertising? Because if you remove affiliate links as a source of revenue, you're probably going to have to increase the amount of advertising that is done in reviews, which makes the reviews probably more annoying, depending on how you do advertising, but it will do that. So I feel like, as you've pointed out, your affiliate links being this passive source of revenue, it's one of the least intrusive ways to make reviews free for people.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you want to say that introduces bias or whatever, and I'm not going to trust your reviews, okay, please don't. Our reviews are not for you. Then you can go look at another review that isn't doing that sort of thing. I think that if we want to create the highest quality free reviews for people, the best balance is doing a balance of things like having Patreon members that are willing to sign up and support us directly, having some advertising provided by YouTube, which is just randomly algorithmically generated, doing the brand deals, the in-stream advertising that we do, and also having affiliate links. That allows us to do, I guess, the least intrusive money-making stream while still providing the content for you for free. And if any of that balance is adjusted or shifts, then it could potentially make that balance less good for the viewer, less good for you guys.
Yeah, that's right. And, you talk about the body of work, and the same thing applies to the advertisers. We heavily vet advertisers. It's a pain in the ass doing this to the standard we do it to, but we consider ourselves very responsible for the ads we serve to you because that makes sense that we would be. And we turn down super duper lucrative deals all the time. This is stuff we've talked about on our Patreon live streams. We've shown evidence of the deals we've been offered. One of the a couple of years ago, we showed one of the CD key sellers that we were just ignoring them because we don't do the cheap Windows keys. We've covered that. We don't do it. One of the sellers, I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been, is it SCD Key? They came to us multiple times offering money. And in the end, they offered us, it was over 100,000 Australian dollars for 12 months to run 2 ads per month. Like, that's a pretty good deal for very little work. But, we don't do that. We turned down, we had a pretty good deal with BetterHelp that when we were in the sort of feeling out process with them, but you and I did a bit, you in particular did a lot more research on them and weren't happy with them as a company and the service they provided. So we pulled out of the BetterHelp deal. They weren't wrapped with that. But again, that was another highly lucrative deal for us. So we do spend quite a bit of time vetting the ads. Obviously we do no gambling ads.
Which is in Australia one of the most highly lucrative ways to make money.
I can't even watch sport on the weekend without getting slammed with gambling ads.
We don't do a sports podcast, but it's well known that if you're in the sports podcasting industry, the way to make money is gambling ads. And if you don't run gambling ads, you don't have a business because you just won't make enough money. Like that's that. And for us, it's like we could, and I was talking to you about this the other day, I think we could double or triple our revenue overnight, like instantly, if we accepted all of the brand deals that we were given.
Yeah.
Like if we went to our inbox, because we get sent all the, like, oh, here's the new AI tool, like the new note summarization app or whatever. And then, oh, there's the CD key sellers, or there's, the Amazon Chinese garbage sellers. Let's just scoop all that stuff in. We'll make some ads for all that stuff. We could put 3 or 4 ads in our reviews. You can get your BetterHelp in there. We can put in a CD key seller. We'll get some AI stuff and then some Chinesium on Amazon. And we would, triple, quadruple the amount of money we're making.
Yeah, the money I was offered last year to cover robot pool cleaners, I would be retired if I'd have taken those deals. Yeah, it's insane. So anyway, again, it's not just, doing a good job with the reviews and being honest there. We also heavily vet the ads. And, there's a conflict of interest. Gamers Nexus face the same thing when we'll advertise, a case from Be Quiet. Not that we review cases, but, MSI might come to us and they want to advertise motherboards. It's the same sort of thing. We've had brands that sell motherboards come to us and they've wanted to advertise their crap motherboards that they couldn't sell. And they've wanted us to pump them up, associate our name with them, and recommend that people in our audience buy them, and click the link in the video description. And we said, no, we've tested that board. It's crap. We're not, like, if we actually encourage them, if we test a product and we find it to be of excellent quality, we're more than happy to advertise that product. But it doesn't go the other way around. We don't get the advertising deal and then say the product's excellent. We vet the product first, so that when you get it, you find pretty well exactly what we've told you it is. And that's how we go about it. So we vet the products first, and if they meet our standards, we're happy to advertise them. Same thing with monitors, right? You're not going to advertise a monitor where you've tested, you're like, this thing's garbage, but they're like, but we'll give you a lot of money. Okay, I won't do my review. I'll just advertise the garbage monitor. Like, we don't do stuff like that.
I test them, and we have run some ads for monitors that I haven't published a review on. But that doesn't mean I haven't actually tested. I have.
We always vet it.
It's just there might be not, because there's obviously a production cost to a review, right? I have to spend time. A product may not be interesting enough to get a full review. I'll still test it and be like, yeah, okay, it's a good product.
I remember one specific example you're talking about. We had to delay because Balin does our ad sales, and Balin got a deal across the line for a monitor, and you were like, that's fine, but I haven't tested it yet, so we can't run it. So, the advertiser was like, when's Tim going to do it? And we're like, it'll be tested when Tim does his strenuous testing.
There was one where I wanted a firmware update or something, and they couldn't fix a problem or something, I remember. And I was like, okay, well, deal's off then.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I really do wish people knew how much money like that we do pass up where, we weren't happy with the product or they couldn't get something sorted out in time or, it was a better help type situation. Because as you say, we would 3-4x our income overnight if we just took those deals. But I guess that's part of why we've been able to build our channel, right? And another thing I explained to Peter as well with, I've already said that his standards are actually gatekeeping up and coming reviewers and hurting the review ecosystem more than helping, in my opinion. And I explained to him like stuff like our motherboard roundups, we can't do them. So without Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, ASRock, without the support of those companies, we can't do them. And his sort of response to that was, well, you shouldn't have built your channel on needing 30 motherboards. And that's, first of all, not how we built the channel. But second of all, that content came about because people want it, it's useful, and nobody else is doing it. So we don't get a good return on investment on that content. That's like for the love of the game type content, right? We do it because
it's subsidized by our other content. We lose money on that content.
We absolutely lose money on that content. We do it because, first of all, the reception to that content is overwhelmingly positive. People really love it and seem to appreciate it. And people who support us directly, on Patreon and stuff, they very much appreciate that content. So that's why we do it. It takes a tremendous amount of time. It's the amount of time and energy that goes in just to sourcing the motherboards is a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, it's not content that's easily done, basically, and we need the support of the brands to do it. Now, we haven't always had the support of the brands, and I don't think we've ever done one roundup where everyone support us, like, Asus do the typical, oh, we're not sampling Prime boards because they suck. So then we have to go buy them, and Asus get annoyed about that. And, ASRock did blacklist us for 2 years because we would tell people that their entry-level boards were trash and not to buy them. And then they had to go and not make. So basically, we told people their boards sucked, and we did that through actual testing. So it wasn't subjective or opinion based. It was independent testing, which they verified, but wanted us not to go forward with. So they decided to blacklist us, and that would solve the problem. But they then found out that their sales were tanking because they blacklisted us. And they decided to make their entry-level boards better, solve the problem that we'd pointed out, and then they reintroduced us. They just said, yeah, we'll give you whatever you want, basically, and now ASRock's really good to work with. And we since caught up with ASRock employees at Computex, and they've said to us, they're like, yeah, well, if you guys recommend a board, we can't make enough of them. Maybe not right now in late 2026.
Yeah.
But when motherboard sales were good, they realized the value of working with us and making good products. And that's really what I've pride myself on and what I'm so proud of what we've achieved at Harbour Unboxed is that we've told companies like MSI, your X570 carbon motherboard is embarrassingly bad. What are you doing? And then they fly people out to Australia. We have meetings with them. We tell them why it's trash. We show them how we test and what they need to do. And I don't think we've seen a bad MSI motherboard since, at least in terms of VR and performance. So, that's cool. That's good that we can. And I mean, I'm not saying where to thank for that. Like, obviously, guys like BuildZoid and Gamers Nexus put a lot of effort into helping solve the dodgy power delivery that motherboards face for a long time. I feel like these days, our rollers, we're just keeping them honest. Like, and that's what I worry about if we don't do this coverage anymore. If we're like, what, it's too hard. We don't get enough views on it. We don't make enough money on it. We're just not doing it anymore. And then, things slowly revert back. They get enshittified again. And we end up with tons of chokes and 2 power stages. I don't know. But yeah, I was actually looking back at the Z890 roundup. That's got 184,000 views. I tested over 50 boards. That took me months of work. And, we made just over $1,000 US in AdSense on that. The latest one we made like $700. I spent over 6 months, I think it was 9 months working on the 53 board roundup for the X870. and we made just shy of $700 US on that video from AdSense. So that's why having ads and affiliate links are so important, because if it's not sustainable for us, nobody else can do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's why people don't do it, because you're just not
Yeah.
making money. And Peter would say, you don't need to do a 53 board roundup, do a couple of boards in a video or one board. That's of no utility. Like, people aren't interested in going and watching a whole review on one board to see what the thermals are like. It doesn't help them. They want to see all the boards, because then you know which ones to avoid, which ones are, all that sort of stuff. That the roundups are so useful for that. And then if you want to dig into the nitty gritty, you can go and seek out, individual reviews on the boards that you've narrowed down to find out which ones, maybe get a bit more information about certain aspects of the boards. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't want to minimize that there's potentially conflicts of interest with this whole system,
There
because obviously
definitely are.
there's definitely conflicts of interest, right?
Yeah.
There is a risk that companies can control media via early access, especially if you're a smaller creator.
They try to. We're not denying it.
Yeah, they try. There's definitely control issues with product samples as opposed to buying the products. There's definitely potential conflicts of interest with affiliate links. And of course, sponsored ad integrations as well. If you work with MSI to create some monitor ads or whatever, and you're also reviewing MSI monitors, that's a potential conflict of interest. We're not shying away from any of these things. And ultimately, bad actors are going to abuse this system. People who are doing low quality work and just want to sit around and make tons of money from affiliate links and getting ad deals done or whatever, they are absolutely going to use all of these conflicts of interest to their advantage to create low quality, bad content. I think ultimately, though, it doesn't, like, even if you set up your business, as I sort of pointed out in the product sampling section, there's no real way to do this in a way that is unbiased or whatever and creating high quality reviews, unless you're genuinely interested in creating high quality reviews from the very beginning. Like, a whole part of Peter's video is this whole, you can assess someone's business and that will tell you whether the person is trustworthy or not by looking at what sort of deals they're doing and whether they have affiliate links or something. I honestly, having worked in this industry now for a decade, and you've worked in it for 2 decades, I don't believe that is how it works. I believe that the high quality work comes from a position of wanting to make high quality work. If you want to do dodgy work and undermine people and do dodgy brand deals and abuse the system, you will do it, and you'll be able to do it in a way that is not detectable by someone assessing someone's business. It is not possible to just look in that way and figure out whether someone is making unbiased or biased reviews, because there are some people that we're aware of doing some very dodgy things that, and I know Steve's smiling because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. There are some people doing some very dodgy things that we would never do, some bad business practices that viewers are probably not aware of. And maybe we don't report on. You're probably asking, why don't you report on this? Maybe because we don't have enough evidence to do reporting on it or whatever. We strongly believe some things are happening, but there are people doing bad work, and you can't just look and be like, oh, they've not got an affiliate link, therefore they're doing a good job or whatever. It has to be an assessment of the end product, building up trust over time, making sure that you're doing a good quality work. People are happy with your recommendations when they buy products at the end of the day. They're happy with your content. And then you've got a mixture, a nice balance of things, making sure that if products do have flaws, that you're not just glossing over them, that you're covering them, you're looking at them. And that's a process over time. And again, I don't want to minimize the conflicts of interest, because there are lots of media players who abuse the conflicts of interest, who across many industries, not just tech or whatever, are creating there's brands that have degraded themselves that used to be held up as sort of these pillars of doing high quality work that now just produce slop content. All of that stuff is bad. However, I think that the way that we try and operate in general, and hopefully this comes across if you're a viewer of Hardware Unboxed, Monitor Unboxed, the podcast, etc., that it comes across that we're trying to navigate this system in a way where we can create the content for you that is making the best quality reviews, the best quality content that is actually independent testing and is our genuine opinions, while trying to navigate all the how do we actually make money so that we can continue to do that for you. And as I mentioned, I think the way that we're currently doing it is the best balance that we can come up with right now. And if it turns out that we can, maybe do things in a better way later and we can remove conflicts of interest as much as possible, which we already do. We already try and do that as much as we possibly can. But if there's ways to further enhance that in the future, we will absolutely do them. But ultimately, as a viewer, and I think we've said this in a few podcasts and things in the past, if you look at our content and you're worried about these potential conflicts, you're not happy with the way that we run our business, you're not happy with the biases that we potentially have in your opinion, I am fine with you just not watching the content. I'm that's okay. If you want to look at creators that don't have affiliate links or purchase all of the products 100% themselves, by all means, that's 100%. I'm fine with that. That's okay. I'm not going to be upset if you click the unsubscribe button and you don't watch what we're doing. That's okay. So that's I guess the final thing I have to say about that, really. Did you have any other things that you wanted to chat about with this particular video?
Not particularly. I mean, you did mention, I've got 2 decades of experience here, and watching Peter's video, I was thinking about that 2 decades of experience. And I know people will say, oh, tech journalism and, YouTube and the age of influencers, things are so bad these days. And it does remind me a bit of the, games discussions that we have about, game optimization and whatnot. But in all seriousness, you're so wrong when you say that. You just have not, if you go back 20 years, a little over 20 years ago, probably now, but the primary source for tech journalism were magazines, print. And mate, it was never worse than print. Print was the paid editorial, that was a review. It was so bad back then. Nothing like today. Nvidia wasn't getting called out for doing something dodgy, or AMD or Intel or anything like that. It was, none of that sort of stuff happened. It was editorials is what it was.
And I think viewers would be shocked at the amount of money that goes to some of those sources, even today, relative to their size, like relative to how much influence or size or readership they have. The amount of advertising money that is still funneled into ultimately what is just an advertorial source is insane. Like, there are some magazines that you wouldn't have heard of that would make more money than us at Hardware Unboxed.
And it's because companies are willing to hand over large sums of money if they can control the editorial. Change our editorial direction, Tim, maybe. I've heard that somewhere before. But it was bad back then, and then it went to the websites. And that was a big step in the right direction in terms of independence reporting. But, a good amount, I don't know if I want to say a majority, but an unsatisfactory percentage of tech websites were pretty much the print thing taken to online form. Every product got an award, and there was those fake award ceremonies and all that sort of stuff.
Well, part of the problem was that, and this goes back to independence, is that the web platform sort of started this way that anyone can make a website. And so people created websites that were genuinely independent. And then over time, as they became bigger, large publishing houses, the exact same people that were making the magazines and newspapers and that sort of thing, started to buy up the web properties. And then once they're bought and they're no longer independent, and it is kind of interesting in Peter's video, he was sort of giving his definition of an independent reviewer and that sort of thing. I've always seen independence, just as a complete side note here, I've always seen independence as not being owned by a big publishing house. So there's no one sitting above us telling us what we have to say or do. And that was a big issue in those early web days. Once those companies started getting sold off to the big publishing houses, they're no longer able to run as this independent, say whatever you want business. They now have to make money for big corporation. And how do these corporations make money on web services? They make, oh, would you look at that? It's more advertorial content, the exact same thing that magazines are doing. And so, that was good up until that point. And then now it's shifted over to obviously the YouTube media side of things that we've got today. And I'm sure that will happen again. Like big media publishing houses are starting to purchase some channels and that sort of thing, which it was actually really great to see Digital Foundry go the other way and become independent in sort of that reverse. Like they were owned by, or largely, I think, funded by a large publishing house. Now they've gone independent, which I think is such a better way of operating. And so, yeah, but anyway, that's where YouTube is at now.
Yeah. I think it's tech journalism, if that's how we're going to put it, is in the best state it's ever been by a long shot. Like, you know, you have guys like Daniel Owen. I don't know if we've mentioned Daniel Owen in this discussion, but he's another example of a guy that I started watching his content and found him to be really honest and a good down to earth kind of guy. We had a couple of chats with him. I didn't really know him too well, but I said to him, you know, are you interested in getting samples and stuff? And he said, yeah, that would help me make my content. So I reached out to our local AMD team and you know, a few other companies we work with, but I said, you know, this guy is over in the US, so not in your region, but he makes really good content, and you know, he's growing and doing a good job of what he does. So could you contact your US arm and tell them to get in contact with Daniel and sort him out? And you know, that same day, Daniel had samples on the way, which has helped him grow his channel and you know, do more of the good work that he does. So, you know, it's not a bad thing, you know, get guys like Daniel, getting them more support and more harbor and more, and it hasn't changed his opinion. Like he's not now like pro one brand or the other. Also, Nvidia's now sending him samples as well. Actually, he had his 5090 burn up and Nvidia replaced that real quick smart, which, you know, some people won't be wrapped with because, you know, creator privilege or whatever. But anyway, getting a bit sidetracked.
No, I think it's the ecosystem that we're currently in with YouTube. But I feel like from some people, there's still a bit of making fun of YouTube, punching down on YouTubers, and sort of saying, putting them all in the group of, you know, everyone's just out making SponCon and doing that whole influencer grift and everything. Well, I think that's just a big misread of the entire social platform. There's a lot of channels I see these days, not necessarily in tech, though it does happen in tech, that are making extremely high quality, like investigations. I referred to, you know, Mega Lag with his honey investigation, but there's a lot of channels doing those type of journalistic investigations. There's a lot of channels that are making high quality documentary content that absolutely rivals what you would see on TV networks. Some of them I would say are better produced, more concise, giving you the information better. I've mentioned, I think, the channel that I really like, Fern, on this podcast before, that does great documentary content, but there's plenty of them.
Yeah.
And so there's this, I get why people do it, because you can sort of just generalize YouTube to be the Mr.
It's dismissive.
Beast.
It's like we talked about last week with clickbait. If you don't like something or someone, that's an easy way to dismiss them.
Yeah. Oh, they're a YouTuber. They just make YouTube content. You know, they're an influencer or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, there's people doing that, but there's also people making high quality reviews and high quality reports, documentaries, whatever. Ultimately it's an open platform. And I think the way that, you know, YouTube and Google has been able to monetize this platform in a way that allows people to do that. I know you referred to sort of like, you know, some of the AdSense that we make on some of these videos that is, you know, not a particularly high number given the views that those and the work that goes into those videos. But YouTube is by far the best platform for this. If you go to anywhere else, that number is so much lower. So
yeah, for sure. Actually, I do have one question for you, Tim, to round out this discussion. So we've talked about early access samples, and we largely think they're a good thing, though we do understand the conflict of interest and all of that. And with our early access stuff, it's almost always just 24 hours early access. So it's like when people are trying to, you know, pre-order or whatever, or just, you know, early adopters, we get in 24 hours ahead of that. So if you do have to buy it, you can usually get a review up like a day or two after the actual reviews, which we've had to do in the past. Apparently Apple's like 2 weeks, according to Peter. I don't actually know because, you know, I wouldn't be seen dead with an Apple product personally. But we know how Apple operate. We have not necessarily personally, but we have some insight from others who do, you know, participate in Apple review programs. comparing the Apple review program to say Nvidia, AMD, Intel, or any of the other brands that we work with, how would you summarize, or what are your thoughts around the Apple review program? I guess what I'm trying to say is, how dodgy do you think it is? How curated do you think the Apple review
Yeah.
program? Because obviously Marquez participates in that program. So is that a BS? Is it a garbage program? Is it heavily curated in the sense that if you do say anything negative or highly negative about Apple, you're out of the program? Or I don't know. You know what I'm trying to ask you though, right?
Yeah, so to be clear, I don't actually know. Apple actually has sent me some stuff in the past, but I didn't make content about it because it just wasn't. I think they sent like one of their pro displays at one point and stuff. So we've got Apple contacts and stuff like that. As far as their like early access review program goes, I'm not sure whether this is true today or was true at some point in the past. I think there was a point where they were quite selective with the people that they worked with for the early access stuff. So some companies are very open. They have thousands of review samples.
Mhm.
They're willing to supply early access to a lot of people. And then there's some companies that are much more selective and will go, we might make a list of 20 people and those people get, access to the newest iPhone or whatever quite early. There was a time when I think they were being pretty selective towards outlets that were quite favorable in their Apple coverage. I don't know whether that is still the case today, but I don't think there's been much uproar about someone making like a negative Apple review and then being like kicked out of the program. I haven't seen too much coverage of that sort of thing.
Maybe they've started to read the room a bit, because LG tried a similar thing, right? And we pretty much ran them over.
Yeah, that was right. That wasn't early access necessarily. That was just more, here's the product, and then you have to say what we. I think they were like not happy with what I was going to say in the. In fact, I don't think I even told them what I was going to say in the review. They were just like panicking that I was going to give a negative review or something, and so they're like, "We need to see this review and stuff." But yeah, I mean, if anything, Apple giving people the ability to publish 2 weeks ahead. Again, I'm just going off what you're saying there. I don't follow that ecosystem too much. That is probably better than what you'd see from like an AMD or Nvidia or Intel in terms of getting people the information well ahead of time, so they can make a decision with plenty of time.
These companies are always going to do early access reviews. To what degree the early access is, whether it's 1 day or 2 weeks or whatever. They're going to do it, okay? Because they all do it. They're going to continue to do it. Really, what we want them to do is have that quite open, like lots of samples for lots of media across the world. And you want to have a lot of media in there that are going to give honest reviews. You don't want it to be this closed off, carefully curated.
Yeah, and I think that was the criticism of Apple at one point. Again, like I said, not sure whether that's the case today, but back when I was reviewing phones, yeah, was a bit of it.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that the likes of Gamers Nexus are included in the AMD review cycle. Yeah, we want to make sure that reviewers who are doing a good job, who are thorough in their investigation, are included. And you don't get guys that are making shorts going, I got this new AMD CPU and it plays Counter-Strike at 400 FPS. Make sure you get one. Like, you don't want that. You want critical reviewers testing out the stuff as soon as possible. And again, what makes a critical reviewer? Go review their body of work and work it out for yourself. But it's also why we say this so often, I feel like a broken record at this point. Don't just watch our review. Don't just take our opinion. Go watch others. Go check out Gamers Nexus or whoever else. Watch as many reviews as you can on day one to get the fullest picture you possibly can. Don't just take our word for it. Don't just watch us. We would, if you come and watch us first, which some people say, that's great. We love that. Appreciate you. But now go watch someone else. See what they had to say. See what they tested. See what they found.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the evidence is there that the majority of our audience does exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, a review program, all of these things that we've been talking about in this video, all of these things can be done in a way that is actually just generally beneficial. Affiliate links are just generally beneficial if they're not influencing the content. They're just a passive income for the reviewer. Doesn't cost the person buying the product anything because it's not paid by the person buying the product. And then, early access product samples can be beneficial if the review program is run in the way that it should be run. Wide access, no manipulation of editorial control, not kicking people out if they give a negative review, and companies being willing to sort of accept that not everyone is necessarily going to have a positive experience with a product. There can even be some products that I think are good that another reviewer is like, for whatever reason, that wasn't a good product for me. Maybe it just wasn't right for my use case or whatever. And that's totally fine. I think if the review programs are broad enough and operated in the right sort of ways with the right sort of goal behind it, which is not to, like, a review program shouldn't be to manipulate content to create positive reviews. It should be about ensuring that when you should have, first of all, have confidence that you've created a high quality product to begin with. And then you want people who have honest, good reputations giving their honest feedback coming to the same conclusion. So, and that's how the whole cycle should work. You get, and then the benefit for the viewers is, especially if there's, you can publish the review before it goes live, the product goes live or whatever, is that the company's made the high quality product that they're confident in. They've got it assessed by independent third parties who are not being influenced in any way, who've assessed it and confirmed that they've made a good product, and that you as a buyer have the information before you're able to buy it, so you know that what you're buying is good. The whole system breaks down, of course, once you've got companies trying to make these dodgy products that are garbage and then trying to manipulate reviewers into telling you their garbage product is actually good ahead of time. That whole thing doesn't work. But the spirit of the review program, I feel, and how they were originally designed and how most of them still operate is under my system, as I've sort of said. And a lot of the time, as you've pointed out with the ASRock motherboard example, once you do create these high quality products and have trusted reviewers recommending them, it is highly beneficial to the company, and it doesn't require any manipulation of any kind. It just requires the product to be good to begin with. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll pretty much do it for this week's podcast episode. We've been going for an hour and a half, and hopefully all of you have been enjoying our little chat about the review process and how we approach things, how we see things like product review samples, early access, affiliate links, and the overall reviewing ecosystem. Like I said, I still think it is worth checking out Peter's video, even though I do disagree with it. And I don't want this to be a sort of podcast where you go and dump on him in the comments or anything like that. He has a different opinion and different approach to how he sees things. And I think there's some areas, especially around how he handled the MKBHD comparisons, that he could improve upon with future content. But this isn't to just like go and massively dump on him and flood his content with negative stuff. Never want to see that sort of thing. So just our opinions based on that video, sort of a nice jumping off point for a discussion. So if you've watched the end of this video, listened to the end of this podcast. If you want to support us, we do have our Patreon page. You get access to the supporter feed. Goes up slightly early there, ad-free. It's a nice way to sort of support us as well if you're interested in that. As we've talked about, Patreon is one of our revenue streams. Is there any
affiliate links in the podcast? Because we could add them.
Oh, let's add some affiliate links to some random stuff. Do you want a mattress?
Yeah, put a mattress there for us, please. Yeah, click on the mattress and just know if you do buy anything else, that will also be included. So buy a mattress. If you need other things, add them to your cart.
Yeah, buy some high value items through our links. Thanks.
Yeah, I think, we probably do. I think beauty products are the higher margin products. So if you want,
I think so, yeah. So
some
just
perfumes.
Yeah. What do we reckon? Don't even know a single perfume brand. So just whatever's the best option,
Yeah. Do other things that are in that category, please.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this right up. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one. That's it. Bye.